We were just talking over on the side over there, and you mentioned that this was not the original ending of the film.
No.
So you want? That's not what I had in my notes to start off with, but I'm curious. Tell us about that.
It's the most recent thing in our minds. Yeah, this goes back to kind of like the experience of working with Nick Stoller. You know, he's in a lot of ways a comedy writer first. You know, I think he likes heart in his film. I think there's always like a hidden sort of sentimental heart in his movies, but it's not his go-to, and I think he only wants to do that after he's I don't know, sufficiently made you laugh. So I'm gonna set these here in case I need them later. But so there was an ending where, and I think we tested this with an audience, where Pigeon Toady shows up. Oh yeah, it was a commercial for the new Stork Mountain, where it was like, we're back in business, and you know, you get to see the factory's all fixed up, and they're making this. Junior's the new boss, and he's making, it's like kind of his Stork Mountain now. You're showing him how functional everything is, and how, you know, he's a better character and so forth. And then Pigeon Toady shows up, and Pigeon Toady keeps on walking into the shot, ruining the commercial. So it's like the world's most expensive commercial.
So they're shooting the commercial.
They're shooting the commercial, and Pigeon Toady will walk in and say something idiotic, and then cut, and we do it over again. Cut. And then finally, and Nick wanted to actually shoot a live-action goose. A goose comes in, and Pigeon Toady says,
"That's great."
And Junior's like, "Who's that?" And Pigeon says, "That's my girlfriend. I told you she's not made up." and literally, what Nick wanted to end the movie on was a close-up of a real goose going, "Ah." Sorry, you gotta turn down the mic. Sorry, the people in the booth are like,
We didn't test that.
That happened faster than I thought. I knew I'd blow their ears out eventually. I didn't know it would be in the
first
question. But that ending, leaving the audience with, did not test as well as you might think.
What do you guys think?
Especially with moms. So, you know, there was, I think actually the ending, which ends up being kind of, it's like it's the payoff for Junior. The ending of Tulip finding her family came after that screening. So, and we'd already animated.
So you guys didn't already have that written out like that?
No, it was like, I was sort of, as I was just sort of saying, you know, you find story at the end. You know, like you don't find it in the beginning. And the process of writing is really like this search process for what you've been trying to say the whole time, basically. And so,
do you feel like the movie is what you guys wanted to say at the beginning? I mean, I know that Nick ultimately wrote it, but
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, from the beginning, he's like, this is a love letter to Parenthood. A lot of it, the reason he wanted to tell the story was because of difficulties he and his wife had conceiving their second child, and then just the tribulations that are universal to all parents of like how hard it is. And so, and the character of Junior, you know, is kind of modeled after maybe like a 20-something-year-old Nick, or certainly the type of guy Nick has worked with a lot in comedy, who, you know, you're 25, you have a career, you're doing great, and you think you know everything, and then you become a father and you realize, oh, it's you know nothing. Yeah, kapow, right? So I mean, and that was the North Star of the movie. It's like if you ever didn't know what the scene was about, it's like, well, let's talk about parenthood. And luckily, a lot of us had that sort of experience, and so that's the underlying reason for the movie.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when I was watching it, that was my initial thought was, wow, this is definitely from the parental perspective. I mean, if you've had a child, you've been through, you remember this exact moment in your life with the child.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but ultimately the film, I'm assuming its target audience is a younger audience.
Right.
So how do you? I was wondering how I can't ask my 3-year-old how he perceived it, but and he didn't watch it.
Right?
Right.
Well, they're scary for like 3 shots. Right.
So, but I was wondering, when you guys are constructing the film, how much are you trying to balance between those two audiences? I mean, obviously the parents are going to connect, but obviously you want the kids to connect, right? So,
well, luckily, you know, Nick is hilarious, and you know, he's extremely silly. I think that's like a unifying thing in his movies is he's disarmingly silly, and you know I think we were concerned actually that boys would have a tough time plugging into a movie that's kind of about babies, and so but you know I think. I mean, I think the other voice that kids can really latch onto is like, you know, sort of absurdist, kind of humor and in the writing of characters, like especially like Pigeon Toady, who's crazy, and then also the physical antics of, you know, it being a cartoon. And I think Nick, this being his first animated cartoon, I think he really jumped in fully into what kind of. I mean, he more than myself, and I've wanted to be an animator my whole life. Like I find myself self-censoring, being like, you know, wolves that make up a plane. That's gonna be too hard. I know what work goes into that. Nick doesn't, so he's like, yeah, wolves should just become a plane. He'll just say ridiculous and absurd things, and after you accept it, you go off and you kind of do it, and that's like part of the anarchy of the movie that I think makes the movie stand out from. Kind of anything else, and that's you know, as I was sort of saying in the intro, that ended up being the payoff of working on this movie is that I think we really did make something that, because Nick is new to animation, we haven't really seen before, and because of Warner Brothers' commitment to making an animated movie with Nick and the rest of us, you know, we had an executive on the show. He was the head of the division, Chris DeFaria, and I've never seen an executive. When first time Chris joined Nick and the rest of the team for a story review, it was like really early Hunter scene, the boss, and Hunter was even crazier than he is in the final version. And Chris DeFaria was like, "Yeah, he's like a psychopath. More of that." Which is
Kids love that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he loved it. I mean, he wanted, you know, he knew that was Nick's sensibility, and he wanted to, you know, get his Nick dollar. He wanted Nick to make the Nick movie.
Huh.
And so again, credit to Chris. I think we ended up getting a movie that is not a direct homage to Looney Tunes, but ends up sort of. I'll hear it from people being like, "Oh, it's such a throwback." Because it's totally crazy. Some of it is just, it's anarchy. But that wasn't done by a mandate. It was done because the casting of Nick, myself, key leads on the show, including our editor, John Venzen, two heads of story, Matt Flynn and Craig Berry, our DP, Simon Dunstan, who, I don't know if you guys noticed, there's a handheld look to kind of the whole movie, which makes it feel alive in a way that you don't see in animation much. And our producer, Brad Lewis, you know, I feel like we were completely empowered to throw a ridiculous amount of money at Mattel Blew Away, or, you know, just like really hilariously, like, kind of dumb jokes.
I wasn't going to say that.
No, but
taking some big chances. I mean, like you said, with the wolf scene, when that one came on, completely unexpected. I didn't even know what I was looking at as it was happening.
Yeah.
And then I look over at the characters, and they're like, "What's happening?"
Yeah.
The exact same expression on their face, and it was something that you don't see in a lot of films in that sense, because it seems like it's dangerous to take that kind of chance. You don't know how it's going to be received, and after especially that kind of investment.
Yeah.
And that's not a small scene to create, I assume.
No, and then you know, and mad props go out to ImageWorks, who they were the vendor. They were the ones who really produced the movie, and you know, and the animators. There was a number of sequences like anything the Wolves did, Glass Factory. You know, they gave like, I don't know how many times Junior hits glass, but everybody fought to get
one more time.
Yeah, they you know, animators clamored for those shots, and there's an amazing one-upmanship to see like who could do the wilder, crazier animation. It's like even when Junior gets hit with sticks and so forth, it's just there's an unhinged, untethered quality. It's just in the writing that I think invites play and ridiculousness that as animators you don't even get very often.
Well, and impressive to have
on a feature.
On the executive level, them also supporting that type of environment as well.
Yeah.
Seems to be a big risk on their part.
Yeah, so hats off to Warner Brothers for sure. I was, always, I always felt like we had wind at our back. I think the Lego movie coming out and being a giant hit, and then that also having a hard comedy tone to it helped. I mean, in fact, that was kind of a wake-up call for us because we were, Nick especially was like, oh, this needs to satisfy just on a straight comedy level. But I mean, I don't. I'm just going to loop back to like the original question. Speaking of, so like we had the hard comedy ending, but then at the last minute, we ended up having out of that. We were like, no, Tulip. There seemed to be a need, like the audience would write like, what happens with Tulip's family, and that whole ending ended up coming out of.
So that wasn't there at all.
No,
it wasn't like the commercial happened after that.
No, and the song that that's an original Lumineers song that was written for the movie, which I mean I'm not impartial, but that's like my favorite song written for a movie since like Mrs. Robinson or something.
Great.
Yeah, I'm like especially
that's
when,
a big span.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big span.
I don't know.
Let me jump in there and ask you. The co-director relationship seems kind of, maybe I'm just not aware. It seems like I haven't heard a lot about that in a lot of films. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance your duties or what your duties were as? Oh, thanks. Man.
It's like I feel like I'm upstaging your question.
Should I pour yours?
No.
Okay.
I just want my mom to know that I did pour Josh's first.
Thanks, Diane. So can you talk a little bit about that co-director relationship and maybe even how it started, where it ended up, or just how it worked? Is that something that you've done before, or is this kind of a new thing?
No. No, that's not true. I co-directed, but it was a feature that didn't get made, but with Fergal Riley, who's fantastic. And that was on Familiars. It was a show I sort of directed in development while it was being developed after Pixar. But this was different. So this is Nick Stoller wanting to do an animated feature, having an animated feature pitch. Warner Brothers wanting to basically start a division, kind of based on a symbiosis between existing live-action writer-directors and animation directors, and pairing them together. And so we were kind of with the Lego movie, which preceded us, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are already, they come from animation and they write. So they already are that. Nick and I were the first sort of match-made pair. And, I think the way it basically worked out was, like, Nick, again, has just decades of experience. He's probably close to 20 years of experience writing in movies and directing. So, I don't want to usurp that. He needed to, when he came on full-time as a director, he pretty much shaped the story himself. And it really, like, the movie is a reflection primarily of his voice. And then myself, and then the other leads that I was kind of naming, the editor, heads of story, the production designer, Paula Sane, we're all kind of supporting that voice. And you kind of learn how to sing in the choir, basically. And I think so much of every movie is the chemistry of the people that are working on it, and the chemistry is different every movie, and there's always a period where you find out where you are in the choir and how to best support this unified vision. And I think we got there. There got to be a point where we felt really comfortable with each other and we knew what we were doing. I was doing some boards during that time. I boarded a lot of the Nate stuff, and then I was also directing the art, which sort of happens in, it's about a year and a half of pre-production, which is art, editorial, and story. That's when you're building your reels and storyboards, which I assume you guys are familiar with on DVD extras, or what, DVDs are dead, but whatever. All right. But at the same time, then, story informs art and back and forth, and, does the airplane, does it look like this, or does it, someone drew it like this, it looks like that?
Harry.
It's Harry?
The plane?
The Harry? Sorry, wait, the hairier. Oh wait, do you mean like the wing pattern?
I meant hairy. It's covered in wolves. The plane.
Oh yeah, that plane
Sorry.
is yes, that one. Oh yeah, I was meaning the
sorry.
yellow one. No,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
It's like, wow, that joke really died.
Then or that plane. Yeah, that was really Nick's. That was in that section of filmmaking. That was really Nick finding the movie that he needed to convey, and it was like finding the tone of the film, and that's really like stems a lot out of this goes right out of Nick.
So what was your in that sense, like what was your so what did you find your primary role ended up being here? And I mean, obviously not just supporting the unified vision, but like what was your actual what did you actually do on a day-to-day basis? And did that change over the course of the film, or was it kind of the same thing throughout?
That was I was, like I say, I was a board artist myself. I was directing art, and so a lot of it was like, well, what does Stork Mountain look like? And here's some concepts. We'd run that by Nick, and Nick would be like, oh, and actually he was, as a director, he's really great. He's because there'll be like one or two things that he needs out of it from a story standpoint or a comedy standpoint, and the rest is like he really gives you a lot of leash, and I mean, it's a lot of fun. But that's primarily what I'm doing there for for a few years, and then when the movie's kind of the reels especially are in shape and you're ready to go to the vendor to get the movie made, that's sort of where then I sort of stepped forward as really the guy who oversaw production. I was up in Vancouver. That's where ImageWorks essentially is. The bulk of it is up there, and I was kind of the one guy who would I was there like 2/3 of the time for about a year, going back and forth.
Is that the main body of the production was only a year?
I had a.
Wow.
I think of it as a year because I had a year lease up there.
Okay.
But it probably bleeds over a little bit. You're ramping up and you're tailing off is probably a little bit longer than that, like a year and a half, probably overall. But yeah, like animation is really serious for about a good year or so, and I had a tremendous amount of freedom there too. Nick would see the work we were sending him, but by that point I had worked with him for a couple of years. Like I understood his sensibility,
right.
And the fun of it was kind of knowing what the target was and playing within that. And like I say, everybody on the show just like was excited to work in a crazy tone. So I don't know, it grew a lot.
When you were animating, when you were directing Presto, was that sort of the same sort of feel in terms of constantly just knowing what your target is and just sort of making everything funnel towards that, or is it a little bit more?
Well, it depends on if we're talking the story process or the making of it process.
I guess both.
Because that's where which this might be another question, just like the difficulty of going from directing a short to directing a feature is, I think, huge. Like it's a huge leap, and the experience of directing something for 5 minutes versus directing a 90-minute story or 85-minute story, it's just like it doesn't literally scale up. It's just like a 90-minute movie is just a behemoth.
So what changes significant? I mean, obviously.
So I mean, well, to answer your question, Presto, the story process was crazy for me because it was really my first time. Being an animator is like being an actor. It's not like being a writer, basically.
Right.
And Presto was like a process of constantly rewriting and searching and me not knowing what I was doing, but then sort of being thrown in the deep end. And that's sort of like, it worked out on the short. We sort of found it the last second, but that's not an experience you want to have over 2 years in pre-production on a feature.
Right.
I mean, that's where things get really dicey. So that's where it's good to be able to under someone like Nick, who's done it a bunch. And the story problems on Presto were mine to solve, and luckily I had amazing support there from the team at Pixar.
You had a story team there that you're working with as well.
The story team, and then also Brain Trust. And then here it was sort of nice because if there was a big story problem, Nick would be the one who would have to like figure it out. So I didn't have to take the full blast of that responsibility to the face. But then the experience of in in contrast to the difficulties of like finding a story, even on a short like Presto, going to production when you feel you know the movie and you've exhausted all what seems like all possibilities, it's like such an incredible joy, and that's where I think I underestimated. Like I just learned to appreciate even what I was doing as an animator in a different way, being on the other side of it. It's just like Christmas morning every day, honestly, because it just becomes so additive. Story is just like so subtractive in a way, like you're constantly kind of throwing stuff out and tearing things down. You're like putting stuff up and be like, you know, it's oddly subtracting is like moving forward. Throwing away, rewriting is moving forward. And then production is just like departments one after another, just one up each other. And that what happened on Presto happened again, and I got to see it, you know, front row seat at ImageWorks, where it was that same thing, where people understood the tone of the movie, and everyone was kind of like trying to out-joke each other. And like there's, I don't know, there's just it's a rich movie, I think. And it's it's rich in detail and rich in humor, and it's, you know, I was just saying I was watching this movie with the sound off, kind of next to my kids while they had the earphones on the plane. And it's like, I don't know, I think it's my kind of movie. I think that there's a generosity there because, and it happens when people are working on a movie that they like. Right. And they're doing the work because they want to, and I mean the morale on the show is really fantastic. ImageWorks are crazy, apart from being very, very talented. They're incredibly professional, and I don't know. There was like a really great spirit on the show that I hope comes out on the screen.
I definitely did. In my mind, I think it strikes me that this is definitely like an animator's film. Like
I hope so. I mean,
for me as an animator, I mean, the performances are fantastic. They're so fun, and there's scenes that I just laugh just because of the performance. The glass warehouse scene, in particular, I was crying by myself on a couch, like 2 in the morning, trying not to wake up the kids. So, is some of that your influence, or is that just the team that you guys had put together, or is it the culture that you created, or was it just kind of, or was that from Nick?
I mean, it all comes back to like this, like I think. To Nick and the reels that went up to production and everyone who worked on that, a great story team, editorial team. I mean, you know, art. It's every department that comes before production. But I think that myself being an animator and sort of being embedded with the animators and you know living up there kind of with them. That doesn't happen. You know, they're in Vancouver. It's not like, you know, they're used to working with clients that are probably, I'm assuming, are in LA and probably never come up.
How often do you know in other films how often the animators literally are not seeing the director? Or is that pretty much?
I think more often than not. Okay. Which, you know, to me, it's like, you know, that's just not how I grew up at Pixar, where I got so much out of being in John dailies, and then that was the mold that was then. You know,
so John actually ran the dailies, and
totally. I mean, it always struck me. I was always flabbergasted that it would ever operate otherwise elsewhere. But you know, I guess, and then I find out later that like that's actually kind of, in some cases, rare.
Right.
I mean, I think you know, I'm not sure how they do it at DreamWorks, but I know that Disney does it the same way that Pixar does it, so that's great. But you just get so much out of seeing other people's work, being inspired by that. Hearing critiques of that, you understand, you know, what the director's looking for before you even end up showing yourself, and then you get audience reaction, which is so rare. You know, if you can get a laugh in dailies, it's everything. I wanted that for Storks for sure. So that was it, and so did Christofaria and Brad Lewis and everybody else, you know, heading up our show. So especially after. You know, the time between Storks and Presto was like 8 years or something. So I went up.
2008, is that right?
Yeah, Presto came out in 2008, and so then I went up there like what in 2000.
I think 2013 you were starting.
15.
So 5 years to start production, but yeah.
Well, and I went up in like 15 is when I started really at ImageWorks. Anyway, so 7, 8 years of working really hard at trying to be a director in pre-production, and so I hadn't seen production forever. So it was like I was like I was coming out of a desert, basically, of not seeing cartoons get made, and to work then. So I think there was a lot of mutual appreciation. I think they appreciated having a director who was an animator and spoke their language, that was there in the room with them, and then I was just like, and they, I fed off of their enthusiasm and crazy talent, and I think they're like, I'm on a movie now. I'm very much hoping we can, I can work with ImageWorks again.
Can you talk about that movie at all?
Sure. Yeah, it's
Okay, go.
It's a book adaptation called Darkmouth. That's the name of the book, and it's Darkmouth is the name of a town where there are monster hunters. So monsters come out, and monster hunters are gonna blast them like Ghostbuster style. The book's out. There's a trilogy out, but the seeds of it has like a kind of an Amblin feel to it. Feels very much like sort of a fun, scary kind of movie that like we grew up with.
What kind of a is that what we grew up with?
I don't know. I think so. It's very
It was scary because it was
like
the 80s.
Goonies or Gremlins or E.T. to an extent. I mean, I think it Ghostbusters obviously.
Is it going to be aimed for a slightly older crowd, or is it still kind of?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, I think talking animal pictures naturally sort of skew younger. Like even Zootopia, as sophisticated as that movie is, and I love that movie. I think there's a I think a talking animal is an easy get for a younger kid. This is people versus monsters. So I think it'll skew a little older. But anyway.
No, sounds great. Okay, I'm jumping way back here, but you've had this. I feel like we're catching you at this very cool moment. We are catching you at a very cool moment. I don't feel it. It's true. As I hope you're entering a career as a director.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm sure it's very exciting. So, but I mean, you started off as what a lot of animators here hope to do. Well, maybe not starting off at Pixar, but starting off as an animator, spending a long time in the studio, becoming a animation supervisor, director on various things, getting the chance to write Presto. And then eventually ending up where you are now. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that transition. And do you ever look back, or is it just does what you do then? I guess you kind of said this a minute ago. Does what you do as an animator, did that feed you as a director, the director you are now?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I guess. Yeah, there's a lot there. It's a.
Like, what's that experience been like? I guess.
It's a huge, very hard growing experience ultimately, and I think in the end it has a lot of rewards, and and kind of like you're saying, I feel like I'm now sort of getting some like firm ground under me, but it's just something that's like there's no college course for it. It's yet honestly, I mean, but you can't take directing in animation. There's a natural sort of paradox in trying to direct in animation, I think. In that you have to become so specialized in one discipline to sort of get the chance usually, and then suddenly you have to be a master generalist. I think there's conventional wisdom that like, oh, if you go up through story, you have a better shot. But then lots of story artists.
I mean, I guess you didn't.
I think. Certainly what the skill you need as a director on a feature is, can you tell a story? And I mean, that talent doesn't necessarily only come out of story, and there are people who are naturally great storytellers. Well, I don't know. It's harder than it looks. But
what's the hardest thing about writing story?
Oh, well, the nerve. I don't know. It takes a lot of nerve. But I don't consider myself a writer. You say I wrote Presto like that. That's how the credit sort of ended up. That wasn't my idea. I really do think that, and I think this is kind of true of any collaboration you have. It's like a lot of times these things work despite you as much as because of you. A lot of times, I can't tell you how many times I thought there was like someone would pitch an idea and I was like, I guess, and then it was like, that was it. That was the idea. But it's a stew. Like, especially Presto is like, I think the result of everyone who worked on that short, giving 1,010%, which is a numerically accurate number. Anyway, that's, but everyone from the Brain Trust, all the way through, that crew was amazing, and everybody had an idea in that short. Everybody.
Wow.
That you could probably call writing.
Did you guys actually spend? Did you actually spend time as a? I mean, the crew's pretty sizable in Presto, right?
I think it was close to 60 or so.
That's big. So I mean, you guys weren't all in the room together pounding out stories.
No, but it's this process that just never stops. And if anything, you're just like the. Let's see if I can find the right analogy. I sort of. I just get to witness all of it. You're sort of the first one on, last one off, and yeah, I think you're sort of a gatekeeper to some extent about what goes in or what doesn't. But you exclude certain things at your own peril if they're right. And I mean, it's so not about you. It's just about the story and what's best for the story. And that's where you want to create an environment that's really fun and where it feels safe and people can throw out anything, because you're like fishing. You're trying to cast out a net and get as much good stuff as you can. And so again, it's like it's not about write then execute and done. It's and like I say, it's just not about you.
Right. No, I like the idea of a gatekeeper is great. How many people on story also? Does everyone on storyboard? Sorry, that didn't come out right. Does everyone on story board?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, basically.
Okay. I mean, are they
but then then on a feature, the writer writes, and that's a part of it, a huge part of it, obviously.
But it seems like an animation that the visuals and the writing, the script are so inherently tied that I mean, do they have to be together or?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you hope so. It's hard to sometimes that the process is a little different every movie, and that's like for a million different reasons. But I mean, are you asking like if a director from story ends up boarding on their own movie, or I guess?
I imagine that it depends on the director's skills and their comfort level there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more of like the story team. If everyone on there is like a storyboard artist first, or writer first, or they're really just both.
Oh, usually a story team is board artists. Sometimes they're 2D animators. But yeah, the story team is definitely about drawing and seeing this. You're testing the movie in drawing, see if it lives or dies.
What do you expect to carry forward from your experiences as an animator, but more importantly, I guess, as a director on Presto and now on Storks? What do you expect to carry forward into, or what do you hope to carry forward into your next film?
I don't know. I think, let's see, the next one. So the next one's Darkmouth. I think that definitely, I mean, I got a great education from Nick on Storks that I already feel I'm sort of using kind of every day, which is this hope that, the hope to make something that's spontaneous and disarming and unexpected, which I think is like one of Nick's superpowers. And, that's, he and I had really different disciplines. And so, he and I we went through our own little bit of a buddy movie, just in making the movie, and it was like, I mean, I had heard this even described from like other board artists on the movie, but just like we're a little bit of an odd couple, and especially coming from Pixar, where story is taken so seriously, story is king, and I think certainly relative to Nick, they have a very dogmatic sort of approach. Nick is so freestyle, and he's so loose and improvisational. I mean, I don't know if I've said this, like, sort of alluded to it. I mean, Nick is, he's a great writer, and then he'll throw all of it out and work just with actors on their feet. And I didn't realize, I think this is how he makes his live action movies. I don't think they're really written fully until they're performed, just like an improv skit. And so that's like...
You were mentioning Christopher Guest before when you were talking, just kind of feeling like a...
Yeah, because while we're making the movie, sometimes I'm just trying to think like, well, what's this movie like? So I can understand how to frame it and contribute. And I think Christopher Guest, I mean, not that I really know much about No, I think it's pretty similar. I mean, when I hear that they're basically outlined, there's a story there, but within that, they kind of like set up characters and let them run. And the fun of watching a Christopher Guest movie is seeing that unexpected, oh my God, like Parker Posey, there's something so weird about that line. It's amazing. And it's sticky, and like I want to quote that over and over and over again. Like there's something alive about it.
Right.
And certainly you see that so rarely in animation. So then, we have this experience on Storks, and I had to deprogram so much of what I thought was crucial about story, and a lot of, in a way, what I learned at Pixar, and just like, let's just relax and float downstream, man. Like, and just like, you really let go, and trust that Nick's like silly approach to kind of just, making this movie, that it was going to ultimately work in the end. He had this phrase in the beginning. It was I like to back into theme, because so many times it's like, well, you gotta know what your movie's about, and you're going to have the character say it in the beginning, and it's going to change at the end. And it's like you have to what it's like. But he's allergic to all that. He just wants to disarm you.
I'm going to be hearing this for the next like 2 years in class. I know it.
Oh no! Oh
I'm
yeah!
just going loose,
sorry.
man.
I'm just going loose,
just going
man.
free, like
Maybe
Nick.
you need to relax, Teach. Maybe
I
that's
don't like
what's
where this is
going on
going. I
here.
don't like where this is going. So do you feel like you're going to be carrying that forward with you? Is that
To an extent, like I feel lucky to have seen it, because, just talking, like I think there's a weird, alive quality to the dialogue here, that because we didn't record it the way it was normally done in animation. Normally it's like separate, normally you can't even get 2 actors in the same room at the same time. So it's all isolated, and you're just getting,
That's just for control purposes, right? Just so you can do all the cutting you need to do.
editors like it. Yeah, it's easier to cut. You're not trying to whittle a 2-minute scene out of like an hour of improv, which John Benson and his team had to do on this movie. And if you get the perfect read, but one of the other actors steps on it, like you have to live with it. And so that's what Nick wants, which I think, and that's what's so hard to capture in animation, is a sense of spontaneity. So most of what we recorded was 2 characters talking on top of each other and riffing. The best lines of the movie, so many of them, were made up on the spot.
What's the best line in the movie?
I mean, I don't know. What's the best line in the movie? Or can anyone think of a line? You made it. You take care of it. That was probably improvised. Yeah, that was. Well, that's a great pull. Like nobody. I would. I agree. I agree. It was in every commercial.
Right.
That's key.
The reads are so great. I mean, just the.
Awesome.
I mean, they're hilarious reads, and one after the next. I mean, I think those really stick out in my mind. Just those voice performances. Wendy was mentioning that too. Just how much those connect, and also to me, connecting with the animation as well. I mean, that play seemed very, very natural and just super fun to experience.
Well, that's the thing too. By the time it then gets to animators, where you're used to, if it's written in a stock way, it feels stock. If it's delivered in a stock way, even if it's great writing, it can feel staid. And these lines were like, sometimes weird. Everybody wanted to animate on Pigeon Toady because he's so enigmatic and weird. It's just like it doesn't come along that often. I mean, I would say like I would always hear people quote Tulip's line, "Orphan hurts my heart," which was Katie Crown just like doing a little toss off aside. But someone made this observation, I didn't even realize at the time. But we have this movie full of duos, Junior and Tulip, the 2 wolves, Hunter and Pigeon Toady, or Hunter and Junior, like all these great 2-people scenes, because that's like how Nick would end up working with the actors, and that's like where the movie came to life.
It seems so dangerous, but very cool result in that sense.
Well, and then like after Katie Crown's, the one it was early on, where she's like the orphan hurts my heart. I mean, she was doing so many ads. Oh my God, that scene of Tulip Department where it's like 100 tulips. She improvised that whole scene on the first take.
Wow.
I mean, so that's she's amazing, and it became really clear. Like, well, we can't lose her. She was gonna be temp, but then she so became the character there was nothing we couldn't be without her. She was irreplaceable, and she she got an Annie nomination for it.
Wow.
Rightly so. So there are ways that's the way in which this movie I think is like super unique. Oh wait, what were you?
Don't ask me that question.
What did you just say?
I said the animation was cool. Pretty sure that's where I was going. Well, let me use that to jump to something else. I was going to ask this question before to prep you, but I forgot. What would you say over the course of your entire life's experience, anything, has prepared you for what you're doing now? Like, if you're looking back, like what's prepared you most for what you're doing right now? Is there? I mean, obviously, one thing is it's a mean question.
Yeah, no, I would just say my parents. I think, and
in what way?
They were always super supportive, and they never questioned. I feel so lucky because I know this is not every kid's story. And animation, if kids that want to be animators, it's kind of a curveball, especially like in the 80s when there wasn't like a known industry. I think now you can know. It's like being a graphic designer. There are schools for that, like this one. I think when I was saying I wanted to be an animator, nobody knew about anything about
CalArts. You go to Arts Fest and you draw cells.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what do you do with that kid?
Joke.
Yeah, right. That's what I did as a kid.
Doug every summer drew these cells ripping off. They were awesome. He would do cells of different Disney characters and actually draw them various poses and sell them at a local arts festival. But they were awesome. Like everyone's like, oh wow, takes you back.
Yeah, it does take me back. My parents were super encouraging about that. It was never like, you can't do that. It was always like, well, let's figure out how to do it. And my mom had me write studios asking, like, where do I go to do this? Warner Brothers and Disney wrote back, and CalArts was at the top of the list. They flew me out to, unbelievable support. Flew me out to CalArts to see the show.
I told them earlier they were upset at how that worked out for you.
Yeah, yeah. I got lucky, and
we were all applying madly for schools and like hoping to get no one, and then they flew Doug out.
No, they didn't fly me out. My parents were nice enough to. We took a trip, and I had an uncle. We visited the uncle in California. They didn't fly me out.
No.
And I think especially directing is a people. It's a people job. You have to love working with people, and I think that I don't know. I think watching my dad and how he has a civil engineering firm in Old State College, and I think watching how he dealt with having a company is I think that rubbed off a lot, and his sense of decency and working with other people, and I think that extends to as well to Pixar and my experience there. I mean, there's no way that can't be a huge influence on me. Working there as an animator, seeing how those directors worked, just outstanding models, obviously.
This will be my last question before we get questions from the audience. For students that don't have your parents, or may not work at a Pixar, may work at a smaller place or one just as big, but a different one. What advice would you give to them for those that want to do what you do? What would you other than just be cool and otherwise like working their people skills? Like what would you recommend for them to do?
I think working on stories beginning, middle, and end, like a complete story. I learned the most about just sort of like the natural rhythms of story when I had to outline them, and I was on Familiars. I threw myself into the deep end at that point and was forced to pitch, get notes, repeat, pitch, get notes, repeat, and
who are you pitching to when you do
in that case, it would be like the heads of the studio, or the animation division there at Sony. For a very short time, it was Hannah Miguela, or Bob Osher was there a long time. Michelle Ramo, and that's the best. That's how I feel like I understood what a 90-minute story was, you can feel then the transition from like, you know what an act 1 is, and you can feel the transition from an act 1 to an act 2. I could, I think for, actually, that's a really great question. I'm glad you asked it because.
Thanks, Doug.
Seriously, because I feel like all that time I was animating and kind of wondering this same thing, and I feel like it's a process that needs to be demystified. It feels unattainable. It takes on what's like crushing proportions. It just seems like it's impossible. You can read all these books on screenwriting, or you can watch all the movies and listen to all of the Criterion commentary and all that. But until you do it over and over again, at least me, like I learned from doing, and I put myself in a situation where you just have to pitch, rewrite, repeat. It's actually it's very hard, it's very embarrassing and uncomfortable. So you have to learn, you have to fail in public,
Just once though, right?
Just once, and then you know everything. That's the kind of the cool part. But that's it. And then over time, it doesn't feel like you make progress, but you do. You do.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much. We're gonna. I'm being told it is time. We are going to turn it over to you guys to ask your questions. There is a mic over here by this. He's laughing at the drawings.
Yeah.
Stop paying attention. Yeah.
Oh.
No. There's a mic over here by this back pillar. If you have any questions, which I hope you do, please pepper Doug. That's the official term.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do that now. So please make your way over to the microphone and ask Doug your questions. None?
Can I ask how many people had seen Storks before? By show of hands? So a few, some.
Can you see it?
And then who here saw it tonight?
This is not how Q&A works.
What?
This is not how Q&A works. What was your second question that I got?
No, it was a really dumb one. It was,
okay.
Who here saw
I
it
saved
tonight.
you.
Thank
I saved you.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. Don't be afraid. Doug's fun to ask questions to. The small ones are the big ones. I saw one person go over there and then disappear.
They went to the bathroom.
She went to the bathroom.
They're all going to the bathroom.
I'm sure you guys are beat. That was a long run. Yes? No questions? Don't be afraid. What's that?
We have one coming.
Okay. Here, we can take a drink.
Yeah, right.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Whew, we made it.
It's a slow drink. Longer drink. Take a longer drink.
Okay.
Yo.
All right.
Is this on?
I
can't tell.
No, it's on. It's a little quiet, but.
All right, this is kind of a random question from Storks. The one thing that caught my eye the most was the penguins and the fact that they have no eyeballs. They are just whites. So I was really curious as to the process that you came to with why that happened and what made you guys decide ultimately to do that.
They forgot that
Oh my God, we got to send it back to ImageWorks. Oh no. That's a great question. Actually, and thank you, because that reminded me of something that I wanted to say earlier. But yeah, no eyeballs. Well, penguins are sort of well-worn territory. One, there's a lot of penguins in animation. In fact, there was.
I haven't seen this. I haven't heard of this.
There was. I was talking to the head of story on Surf's Up. It's a hugely underrated movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. You should definitely check it out. Great, but the studio apparently, according to him, was it didn't do well because people had penguin fatigue, which is I guess one of the great things you hear at studios.
Yeah.
As people the post-game analysis,
yes.
Penguin fatigue. So lots of penguins. That's one thing. They're evil. They have to be.
They were uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and then the board artist drew them that way. So that was kind of his solution for creating some new penguin real estate was maybe no eyeballs, and they read as evil. Plus, I mean, the alternative is to do the wrong trousers penguin. Do you guys know wrong trousers?
What?
Man, that's
Come
not
on.
a.
Try that again. Try
yes.
that again. You guys know the wrong trousers, right? The wrong trousers. Okay.
Okay. So you do, or are you just saying that because he said it, and now you're just lying? if you're lying, you need to go see The Wrong Trousers. It's one of the best things ever.
You do.
But the eyeballs are black, and it's a black on black. You know, I don't know. And plus it's been done. It was the only thing we could do, honestly, if you think about it.
But you had to have penguins.
We had to have penguins. We know they're inherently evil. That's literally
Everybody
what Nick
knows
said.
penguins
That's
are
what,
evil.
That's what, yeah, because he's like, penguins are so cute. They're always so like, you know, they're so cute and good in movies. So he wanted evil ones. But that sequence there's an interesting thing about that sequence. Huge credit goes to Justin Ridge, the board artist, on that sequence, because, and huge credit goes to Nick as well. So first time directing in animation, Nick was a really quick read, and he understood the strengths of working stuff out in drawing. And like I was saying, he's not very focused on script anyway. So you would generally, as a board artist, get scenes one of two ways. Either it was improv with actors, like I had mentioned earlier, and it's you would get a radio play, which honestly, as an animator, was very easy for me. It was like, oh, I'm just doing my thumb pass, basically. Or he would go up to someone like Justin and be like, wouldn't it be funny if there was a fight scene and they couldn't wake up the baby? And then Justin amazingly goes away, and 3 days later, you have this amazing sequence just based off of verbal pitch. And so that's a great illustration of the contribution of a killer story team and their hand in writing the movie. I think the pillow gag, which is one of the most reliable laughs in the whole thing, I think that's Justin. I think Nick was like, hit him with a fork. Anyway, so that's when you're having fun.
Right.
When stuff like that happens.
Well, I feel like we're hearing that more and more. Like I know Adventure Time is all. I mean, it's like a bunch of comic artists, right? I mean, all.
Yeah.
So
Or like it's like I think I would assume it's the same way with the new Samurai Jacks. But I know the original Samurai Jacks was basically like it was all of the artists on the show just writing the episodes, and they would kind of sit around. Their writers' room was, I think, just the story guys. I'm not sure that it was like formally written. I might be misquoted, but that's my impression. So anyway, amazing. You want to get in a room like that.
Do we have someone else lined up?
Hey, thanks for coming. My question's a little more about Presto and just how you came up with like how you approached shots or directing animators in shots, or like when you were animating, and how you came up with like all the wacky ideas for poses and breakdowns.
Oh, cool. You're an animator.
Yes.
So much of it was the style, if you mean style, was dictated by, and this is like careful what you pitch. In one of the pitches, I really casually offhandedly said, yeah, it's like they'll fight. It's like a Looney Tunes. And John Lasseter was like, that's it. Do it like Looney Tunes. And suddenly I was like, gulp, because now it's an homage piece, and I have to live up to crushingly great cartoons. But that tells you, we had to come up with this hybrid Pixar, like kind of Looney Tune, like classic cartoon style. So that sort of meant, and we got a ton of animators off of Ratatouille. We were right after Ratatouille. And Brad Bird's way of directing animation is like very milk call. It's like classic Disney, and it's just rich, right? And the note I ended up giving kind of over and over again. This is why it's great to show up to dailies and hear other people get this. When you hear the same note over and over again, you understand it's like, oh, style of the show. I was like, we need to move it less. It's just it looked too good, basically. It's like you have to underbake it, don't overbake it. And so shots like I think I just mentioned this today, like the hat getting sucked down on Presto's head. I mean, you want the body to move as little as possible, and it's just like what makes that style of animation funny is like all of these isolated gestures. And it's a little bit more arch, and oddly pushing it might mean animating it less.
Right.
Because what you're mimicking is this held cell style, and there's a weird dryness to it that I think makes those classic cartoons so funny. So that pulling back basically was and mimicking cell animation to some extent, even though the CG models was a big part of getting that to work. Same with the camera. When you're asking about shots, we realized, oh, you can't. We didn't even pan. all we did were lateral one-dimensional moves, because classic cartoons were shot on a platen, and you know, so the easiest thing.
That's the platen, by the way.
Yeah, you're shot on an Oxberry, or actually equipment I've never used, but you know, there's a weird dryness to that. I think which made those cartoons funnier. The fact that you have this sort of like robotic camera. The easiest thing to do in CG is to have the camera fly around, which is why it's been in every CG everything since the beginning of CG.
Okay.
But so again, you know, part of the style of that short was doing less rather than more. But that was another thing we sort of discovered along the way.
Awesome.
Does that answer the question?
She's gone.
I think I answered it early, and then she was like, "I'll just let him go."
Next, Brian, is that you?
I have another animation question. Now, I'm hearing that you came out of drawing, that you were really good at drawing, and then you're off to become this amazing animator at Pixar, which is all CG animation. Are there? It's a question that comes up for me as a teacher as well. A lot of people asking, to do animation, CG animation, do you have to be able to draw, or are there a lot of people who are CG animators who never drew and that sort of thing? Do you pay attention much to that kind of a ratio?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so funny because, well, yes. Well, first of all, thank you. That's very nice. I have met animators who don't have any drawing background, and they just have a natural eye, I guess, and are outstanding at posing, they're fantastic, which kind of disproved my theory at the time, which is like you need a drawing background. I don't know if you do, and now animation. I was sort of saying I haven't really animated since Presto, and so I've never honestly used direct manipulation, right? Which I assume that's obviously, if you've started animating since Presto, that's probably all you do. And animators that I was watching firsthand on at ImageWorks, making an airplane out of wolves, can't even begin to understand it.
That's the beauty of it, right?
I'm not
sure.
You
were the director.
I think the process now is so intuitive. I would say I can't imagine how drawing would hurt. But by the same token, I can't imagine honestly how anything. I think so much. I think any life experience helps you. You're an actor. I think doing other things is just good and healthy. Not doing one thing obsessively. I think that if you have a rich background and you simply work hard at animation, I think that you're probably going to be fine.
Excellent.
Just a black pit over there. I can't see there's someone else hanging out in the background. Okay, there we go.
Hi. So in your program bio, it says that you got your first job working at Toy Story when you were 19. As a college student, one of many, I'm sure, who's racked with all sorts of anxieties about finding a job and not starving to death in the future, my question is basically, how did that happen?
Let's see. That was, a lot of it was luck. I would say I was well positioned. At the time, CalArts was like a funnel because there were so few other schools. So it was very easy in a way to be exposed and I had a really good year when I went. So I got some attention.
They actually came out there to recruit, right? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, they flew down. Well, and that's they sent Andrew Stanton and Pete Docter, who were not even yet directors.
Wow. Wow.
John, stayed behind and was working on Toy Story. But yeah, they flew down from Point Richmond back in the day, and yeah, they showed me tests on Toy Story and so forth, and I was blown away.
That Pixar was showing you tests?
Pixar was showing me, they had one that, yes, I remember them vividly. It was like such an amazing day. And then I turned them down, which is crazy. So and then the earthquake happened in Northridge, which is like early '94, and they were offering, this is like a day or two into my second semester, the spring semester, they were offering tuition back after this earthquake because we couldn't get in the building. And so I started calling some, these offers that I had, and nobody was interested in an animator. They were interested in summer, but not in January. So, and amazingly, Pete Docter, they were having a huge rewrite on Toy Story at the time, and they had just let a bunch of kind of animators, they put a bunch of animators on sabbatical. So the producers was like, well, we're definitely not looking for a trainee right now. But Pete Docter was like, well, come on up and we'll just put you on one of these free machines since everyone's gone, and I'll train them for free. So, I mean,
It's pretty different days. I mean, that's
very different.
Now? Yeah.
I mean, this is where, and so, okay, this is, and I'm telling you the details. Where this, I mean, it's such a specific set of circumstances that it doesn't apply to literally anyone else. But obviously I went up, I got trained, and the rest is history. I was...
Good luck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What was great about that opportunity is it was a place where I knew there was a ton of talent. I mean, these guys were CalArts alum. Everyone who went to CalArts knew those guys. And so they were heroes. I was open-minded. I was excited that Toy Story wasn't a musical. My mom was like, you should take those computer classes. What a great Diane impersonation that is, right?
That's
so vivid.
terrible.
That's what she talks like, just like that. But, and I was like, Mom, I'm going to be drawing for the rest of my life. I don't know what you're talking about. But she was right. Which camera's on? Thanks, Mom? Or, I don't know. But I was open-minded enough to try it out. And you want to, I think that's obviously that's the type of place you want to look for. I mean, and since I've been trying to direct, or since I've been directing, which is kind of a huge, I feel like a freshman all over again. I was a newbie all over again as soon as I was starting. I was always looking for a place like Pixar in 1994, it's like a garage, right? Where it's all potential, and you can sort of feel it, and it's a gut choice. And you just want to be working with smart people that you can learn from and have fun working with. And that's, so objectifying an institution, I think could work out, and it could be great. And I wouldn't say don't shoot for what is today the best, but be open to what might be the best in the future, and like situations that are fertile and creative and you can learn. That's really like, if you can do that over and over, you're going to be fine.
Can I also throw in there too, it strikes me, and I've heard this from a lot of my artist friends, whether they're animators or in any form of art, that if you ultimately you want to get that gig, it pays to be prepared. To have have stuff that you're invested in, that you've been working on, that's out there. So when someone says, hey, do you have your reel? You're like, yes, I do. It's right here.
Yeah.
What are you writing now? It's like, oh, well, actually, I'm working on this thing. So like, to really always have something that you're invested in next, so that when that moment happens, because you don't know when that moment's going to happen, that you have something to say, this is where I'm at this moment. I know where I want to be, but ultimately, like, this is what I have right now. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Luck favors the prepared, right?
I think so.
To quote Brad Bird.
Oh, well,
or
yes, then. I think we're in the point to have to wrap it up.
The point there is there's a point where you stop wishing and you have to start doing.
Right.
And that's like, I feel like studying, I read the screenwriting books. You become like a film nerd, and you hoard movies, and you can watch them, rewatch them, and study them, and that's great. But ultimately you just have to like put a camera in your hand, shoot a dumb home video over the weekend, and cut it on your phone.
Just so you know, I've seen that video that he shot in high school.
Well, oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it doesn't
BSing, but
no.
I know what you're talking about now. But yeah, or you can do breakdowns of existing movies. That's a great exercise. But maybe take an idea of yours then, and break that down. What are the 5 obligatory scenes in your story? Write that out, and just inch by inch, you do a little bit more. What does that look as a 3-page treatment? What does that look as what if you want to flesh it out more? What does it look like as a 20-page outline? If you can do a 20-page outline, then you can get Final Draft and you can start writing a script. But like, that's where the learning is, and that's the hardest thing to do by yourself. But that's that's what you got to do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Doug, thank you. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here. And thank you guys.